The day Daniel picked up his 2025 Kawasaki Vulcan S was one he knew he would never forget. The dealership floor gleamed under bright lights, every motorcycle polished to perfection, but the Vulcan stood apart. Its matte black finish absorbed the light, making it look like a shadow given form. The low seat, the minimalist design, and the aggressive stance all spoke to him in a language he hadn't heard in years. The salesman's voice was little more than background noise as Daniel signed the final paperwork. All he could focus on was the machine waiting just a few feet away. The key felt heavier than it should when they placed it in his hand. A key to freedom, a key to change. When the engine roared to life for the first time under his touch, the sound hit him like a memory. That deep, throaty growl wasn't just mechanical, it carried echoes of his younger years, when he and his friends tore through highways on bikes that barely held together, when they laughed at broken speedometers and fueled themselves with cheap gas station food. Now, though, it was different. Daniel wasn't a young man anymore. His hair had more gray than black, his body bore the stiffness of years hunched at a desk, and his life had narrowed into predictable circles. Work, bills, sleep, repeat. Somewhere along the way, he had put aside the hunger for the open road, telling himself that stability mattered more. But the fire never fully died, it had simply smoldered, waiting for something to fan it back into flames. That something was humming beneath him now. Daniel eased the Vulcan S out of the dealership lot and onto the city streets. The bike responded to his touch with precision. Every gear change felt smooth, every throttle twist immediate. The air hit his face, carrying the sense of gasoline, exhaust, and city dust. He felt a rush of energy, as though the years had peeled away, leaving behind the younger man who once believed the horizon was endless. People noticed. At a stoplight, a couple of teenagers in a car beside him stared, one of them raising a phone to snap a quick picture. Daniel smirked beneath his helmet. He remembered being on the other side of that glass once, watching older riders and dreaming of the day he'd own a machine of his own. Now, he was that figure, inspiring someone else without even trying. The light turned green, and Daniel let the Vulcan loose. The engine's rumble deepened into a roar as he accelerated, weaving through traffic effortlessly. The city blurred around him, neon signs, shop fronts, pedestrians. For the first time in years, he wasn't weighed down by thoughts of responsibility or regret. He was simply moving, existing in the moment. But when he should have turned back toward his apartment, something inside him resisted. Instead, he veered toward the edge of the city, following the signs to the highway. His heart pounded with anticipation as the road widened and opened before him. And then he was free. The Vulcan S ate up the miles effortlessly. The hum of its tires against asphalt, the rhythm of the engine, and the sting of cool evening air combined into something almost intoxicating. He hadn't planned this ride, but the bike seemed to guide him, pulling him farther away from the familiar and deeper into possibility. The sun sank low, painting the horizon in streaks of orange and crimson. Daniel slowed as he passed rolling hills, fields stretching endlessly under the fading light. His chest tightened, not with sadness, but with something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. After nearly an hour, he spotted a roadside diner, its neon sign flickering against the encroaching darkness. He pulled in, the Vulcan's engine drawing a few curious glances from those lingering outside. Parking the bike where it would gleam under the sign's glow, he removed his helmet and felt the night air cool against his sweat. Inside, the diner was modest. Red booths, checkered floors, the faint smell of coffee and fried food. He slid into a booth by the window, where he could keep the bike in sight. As the waitress poured him a cup of coffee, an older man a few tables away leaned back, studying him. The man wore a leather vest decorated with patches, his silver hair pulled back into a ponytail. His eyes, sharp and knowing, flicked to the Vulcan parked outside. "Nice ride," the man said, his voice rough with age. "That the new Vulcan S?" Daniel glanced out the window and smiled. "Yeah, picked her up today." The older man grinned, his teeth flashing in the dim light. "That's a machine that'll take you places. Not just on the road. Maybe places you don't even expect." Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the cryptic tone. "You sound like you've ridden a few yourself." The man chuckled. "Ridden? I've lived on two wheels more than I've lived in houses. Every bike I've owned carried me to something I didn't know I needed, friends, mistakes, even love. That Vulcan of yours, it's not just a bike. It's a compass. You'll see." Daniel sipped his coffee quietly, the man's words lingering long after their conversation ended. He didn't fully understand them, but something inside told him they carried truth. When he finally left the diner, the night sky had blossomed with stars. Daniel swung his leg over the Vulcan, the seat welcoming him like an old friend. The engine came alive once more, vibrating through his body. He hesitated, looking down the dark road ahead. He could turn back, return to his apartment, and let this night fade into memory. Or he could keep going, following the road until it told him to stop. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. With a twist of the throttle, he surged forward, the Vulcan S roaring beneath him. The wind tore at his jacket, the stars wheeled overhead, and the horizon whispered promises he couldn't ignore. He wasn't just riding a motorcycle. He was reclaiming a piece of himself, a piece he thought he had lost forever. And as the highway stretched endlessly before him, Daniel knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. Weeks passed, and the Vulcan S became more than just a motorcycle to Daniel. It became a ritual, almost a lifeline. Each evening, after the demands of his office job had drained the daylight out of him, he found his mind drifting toward the machine waiting in the garage. It wasn't long before he stopped resisting the pull. His coworkers noticed subtle changes: a lighter step in his walk, a strange brightness in his eyes. What they didn't see was how every ride stitched together pieces of him that had long been unraveling. The Vulcan S was unlike anything he had owned before. Its responsive handling made city rides a joy, but its true brilliance revealed itself on the open highway. Every time he leaned into a curve, he felt as if the bike was reading his thoughts, responding with effortless precision. Riding wasn't just transportation anymore, it was meditation, therapy, and adventure all rolled into one. At first, Daniel rode alone, tracing old routes he once explored in his 20s. There was a particular gas station by Route 18 that had been their unofficial meeting point back in the day. He remembered his friends: Mike with his beaten-up Harley, Tony with his obsession for speed, and even himself, wide-eyed and reckless, thinking they had all the time in the world. Many years and responsibilities later, those friendships had faded like old Polaroids, lost to moves, marriages, and mortality. One Saturday morning, on a whim, Daniel rode out there again. The place looked nearly the same, only weathered by time. The paint was peeling, and the sign squeaked in the wind, but the smell of fuel and asphalt was unchanged. Standing there, sipping cheap coffee from a paper cup, he realized something powerful: though life had moved forward without him, the road had waited patiently. It was during one of these rides that Daniel's story changed again. He had pulled into a gas station on the edge of a small town, the Vulcan's tank running low. As he filled it, another rider rolled up, a woman on a fiery red sport tourer, her helmet tinted dark. She moved with practiced ease, swinging off her bike and pulling her helmet free. Loose strands of dark hair fell across her face as she glanced at him. "Nice cruiser," she said casually, nodding toward his Vulcan S. Daniel grinned. "And yours looks like it's built to outrun the wind." Her lips curved into a smirk. "That's the idea." Her name was Maya, and she was unlike anyone Daniel had met in years. Sharp-tongued, adventurous, with a laugh that could carry over the roar of engines. They talked briefly, about bikes, about the weather, about routes, and before he knew it, they were riding together. That day stretched into hours of sweeping roads and shared silences broken only by the sound of engines. The following weekend, Maya texted him an invitation: ride. From then on, they became almost inseparable on the road. She pushed him, sometimes literally. "You're babying that Vulcan," she'd shout over the wind as she leaned into a sharp curve. Let her breathe. Daniel, cautious at first, found himself following her lead, daring more, riding harder, rediscovering the raw thrill of speed and control he'd once known. Together, they explored hidden roads, mountain passes that wound like ribbons through pine forests, and lonely stretches of desert where the horizon shimmered like molten glass. They camped roadside a few times, eating instant noodles under the stars, their bikes parked side by side like loyal sentinels. Daniel couldn't remember the last time he had laughed as much as he did with Maya. She teased him constantly about his midlife crisis bike, but she also respected the bond he clearly had with it. One night, after a 300-mile ride, they found themselves sitting on the hood of her car outside a diner, too wired to head home, too tired to keep going. The Vulcan gleamed under the street lamp, its dark frame catching the light in ways that made it look alive. You know, Maya said, sipping her soda.